Well, hello everyone. We are on season 2, show 4. Can't believe this. I think we're on a roll these days, which is wonderful. I'm Laurie Timoney, and I'm with Go City. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Experience.This.Travel show. And before I move on to my other co-host, I'd love to have Meredith introduce herself. So our guest today is Meredith Rangel with Bookable Tourism. She's joining us from, is it Sydney that you're joining us? Okay, good. One of my favorite cities ever. She's joining us from Sydney. And Meredith, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone. Firstly, thank you so much for having me on Experience This. I'm really delighted to be here. My name is Meredith Rangel and I have a company called Bookable Tourism. And what I do is I help experience operators look for and find best fit booking systems for their business with modern connected booking systems. So we can really connect our industry and help our industry sell better. So that is basically what I do. I've been working in the industry for over 20 years across distribution, marketing, and also worked in a booking system startup for 4 years. So part of that kind of evolution in the industry. And yes, so that's basically what I do. I advocate a lot of technology in the industry and how even for whole destinations to embrace technology to evolve with meeting our consumer needs and demands.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, how about we move on to our esteemed co-host? How about Christian?
Yeah, not much to say. My name's Christian with Magpie Travel, and let's pass on to Bruce.
Hey, and it's Bruce Orzard here. I'm a co-founder at Arrival. It's great to have you, Meredith. We've been working together for, God, almost a year now. And you are the first guest on Experience This from Australia. So you will always have that honor.
That's not true. That's not true, Bruce, but fine.
I was going to say, are you sure about that?
Who did we have from Australia?
We had Tony Khan.
Oh, yeah.
We did. All right, you are the second guest.
Still an honor.
From Australia.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's great having you here. So the reason that we invited Meredith on today is because Meredith, you wrote an article recently that was on LinkedIn, and it addressed the fact that, well, you feel as though there's not enough innovation happening in the travel space. In fact, I think you said that the industry was failing at innovation. And apparently this was a conversation you had with a friend. And I think the two of you may have decided at that point that things were just not happening fast enough from an innovation standpoint. And so decided to write this article, which is fantastic because we all agreed that it was a good topic and one that we definitely needed to touch on. Some of the things that you said that I thought, resonated with me was the fact, a couple of things stood out. You mentioned the fact that senior roles were going to people outside of the industry versus people within the industry. And I actually have noticed that quite a bit myself, as well as the fact that you said that we weren't attracting good developers because our industry wasn't innovative enough. And I thought, well, those are two really big things to come out of this article. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And I guess that would essentially get to the point of, what kind of impact is this having? But before we get on to that, when I look at just the industry overall, I actually think that the travel industry, I think that's a big thing to say, because the travel industry itself is innovating to some degree. So are you saying that the whole travel industry is not innovating, or are you saying that the experiences industry is not innovating? And are they not innovating in one particular area or across the board? Can you maybe give us a bit of context around that?
I'm actually seeing, so there are pockets of innovation. There's great technology coming out and there's great opportunities coming out in the industry, but I'm seeing from an industry-wide perspective that when these great opportunities come, there's still a lot of hesitation. And it's not just from an operator perspective, it's often from all levels, right up to the top levels of government and down. And so because when we're not evolving fast enough, that sometimes this innovation gets lost or it peters out because it's not picked up enough. Because as you know, when you create a new piece of technology or anything, you know, you have to pay the bills essentially, or get funding or so on like that. And because it's a bit slower to the adoption, sometimes, you know, you might not get the funding, or you might not be able to continue on for it to see its full potential. So I just find that, you know, there is innovation there, but I'm finding that as an industry as a whole, we seem to be quite hesitant at embracing new innovation. So which is causing shifts. And there seems to be where there are these pockets that do embrace the innovation. I only can see, and look, you know, I can only see that these companies will eventually probably take most market share and survive and be sustainable, as opposed to those who don't adopt these changes and technology.
But Meredith, it's important that you differentiate the question Lori asked, because we talk about experiences all the time on this show. But we always want to talk more about the overall travel industry at large. And your article was travel industry at large, not about experiences, even though you're very engaged in the experiences industry. So what are you talking about? That was the question that Lori really wanted to try to get at, so we could understand.
Industry whole level. So at an industry, like the whole industry as a level. So distribution, parts of distribution, operators on the ground, with having connected booking systems in place, embracing, you know, different types of distribution, the government agencies as well, and anyone who, and associations who often work in the industry as well. It just seems to be, and what I've found, you know, since COVID happened and since the pandemic happened, you know, it's just been very interesting, particularly in the last 12 months, in attending things like conferences and shows. Not Arrival though. Arrival is actually so forward thinking and so embracing this kind of innovation and change, that going to some of these conferences where you walk away going, we're still talking about things that we were talking about 15 years ago. Like, those things aren't really that relevant anymore. Why aren't we talking about these connectivity problems that we may be having? Why aren't we talking about these things on these large scale conferences where we've got all of industry in the room? Why aren't we talking about this? We have things like AI that's, you know, it's here basically. And when we're looking at gaps, like in the experiences sector, like you're saying in the Arrival Your Technology and Connectivity report, for tour operators, it was what, 58% still didn't have a booking system. And so then you go, okay, well, if AI is the next stage coming in and consumers are showing that they're going to use these platforms to book and research, but we don't have an industry that's connected in, how are we going to meet this consumer change and consumer demand change? Our industry is not ready for it because we still have this huge gap that we're not filling yet. So it's across the entire industry that I'm seeing it happening. And what I mean from like the government levels and the association levels that aren't actually picking up on that is like, and I know that Bruce, you and I have talked about this, like some of the DMOs, you know, who do big marketing campaigns, you know, and so on, to try and get people to come to their destination. And their remit is they want to be, so a traveller has 3 destinations in their mind that they're going to choose from, that the researcher shows that they're going to choose. They sit there and think, I need just to be one of those. But we know from the Arrival research that things to do determines destination choice. But we're not activating our experiences sector. We also know in the research that they're using OTAs to research. They're going through the online travel agents listings to go, well, what can I do when I'm in those destinations? But if we don't have an activated experiences sector coming in that's connected into those OTA platforms and if they're not showing, then how is your destination going from being in the top 3 to being the chosen destination.
Yeah.
So
I think that, you know, from what I'm hearing, I still think that saying that the travel industry itself is not innovating is a very broad swath. And I think that what you're really focusing in on here is obviously the experiences space, and you're specifically looking at operators. And many of these operators are small to medium-sized businesses. When I look at innovation, I do see innovation in the travel industry, and I think innovation comes in many different forms. You know, of course, there's AI and all of that, and all of that, what that brings, from personalization to chatbots helping customer service. And but there are things like biometrics. You're starting to see that at the airport more and more and more. You're seeing robotics coming into play in certain hotels. I think it also depends upon what part of the world you're in as well, in terms of how innovative, you know, the travel industry is. But I'd be interested to hear from Christian in terms of, you know, Christian, what are you thinking when you hear this? I mean, you're obviously very close to innovation because, and especially as it relates to tech. Do you think that the travel industry is innovating?
I think this comes up a lot, and I think it's fragmented. Well, it is fragmented. That's not a question. And I get the feeling that every industry that's this fragmented is this slow moving. I hear the same from the hotel industry, that they are lagging behind. We all think they're 10 years ahead. I think the hotels think they're 10 years behind. I think restaurants, same. I think a lot of retail, same. So but then you do see the charts of major industries, and travel, I've forgotten the metric they use, but it's developers or something, and travel does often come bottom of those charts. But is that because it's fragmented? We haven't got a choice. We're always going to be down there. But I also I think back to, and we've known each other for a long time, Laurie, going to the trade shows. I think back to IPW, which is our biggest trade show in the US 20 years ago. And that's the same. I'm having the same conversations with the buyers as 20 years ago. Nothing's changed, except for now we have an API for availability. But when it comes to content, and here's my products, and here's my rate sheet, and all right, we don't hand them CDs of images anymore, but this is what we deal with every day with content.
You still get contracts at that show? Like, it's still like, here's your contract kind of thing?
Almost. The contracts have moved to fax. The contracts have moved on a bit, but it's the same process. We're going to go back and forth on email following the show. That's what we're trying to tackle at Magpie. So maybe it's our fault, but in that respect, the way the industry communicates and transacts has not changed much at all.
Hey, it's Merica from the Von Mack Agency, here with your tourism marketing half minute. Raise your hand if you've ever heard the fallacy that tourism is recession-proof. Yep, that's definitely not true. So in today's economy, it might be a good time to start thinking about scarcity marketing. This is a technique that focuses on creating a sense of urgency and excitement all around your product. And studies have shown that customers are 30% more likely to purchase something when they believe it'll sell out. So try offering limited time packages, exclusive discounts, or even something VIP, but make sure to A/B test your results.
So I have my thoughts, but I'd like to throw out there, like, okay, let's identify why we think that is. I mean, I have some of my thoughts around why I think small and medium-sized tour operators especially are not adapting this whole, you know, the world of getting online. I mean, I think about just myself having had experience working for this small boat company that's not that far from me. I mean, they had a boat. They wanted to, you know, launch a product. They had no clue what they were doing. They just wanted to stick it in the water and like, let's go. Now, the interesting thing is, because they weren't really trying to sell multiple departures, all these people started seeing this boat going around the harbor, and it's a tiki boat. So they're like, I want to go on that boat. So there was, just by getting the hotels engaged, there was already people that were trying to, of course, that's when they hired me, and I came in, I set them up with a booking system, but I completely understand that mentality. You know, I'm not sure that the people running those businesses or starting those businesses are, they're not thinking about tech. They're not thinking about money. They're thinking, oh man, I want to like open up a boat company. This is so much fun. And so, and I'd be interested, Bruce, you are somebody that obviously deals with these people all the time. Why do you think that the industry isn't innovating, and is particularly around some of the areas that we've identified?
Yeah. First of all, it's really dependent on many things, right? Like the US number of operators in the US that are connected is very different than Europe, which is very different than Australia, and which is very different than LATAM or APAC. So it's all very regional still. When we started Arrival in 2017, we had a line we used to like to use, which really answers your question, Lori, which is we want to help operators get their head out of the kayak, right? So you've got these people that know how to run kayak or rafting tours, and they're really good at running kayak and rafting tours, but they don't know shit about how to run a business. And they don't really want to. They just want to be on the water running their kayak tours. So when you say what's the challenge, is getting them to realize you got to learn how to run a business. Okay, but how? What do we need to do? And then you need to talk to them about connectivity. You need ResTech, then you need to connect that to distribution. So no one's really teaching them that unless they come to a conference. And I don't mean just an Arrival conference, although that's the best one, but obviously there's other places too, right? Where they learn from people who've gone through this, because it's scary. They're running their companies with pen and paper or a spreadsheet. And now you're saying, no, you need to use tech. Oh, and it's so expensive. Well, no, it's not. It's free from a lot of these SaaS providers now, right? You know, not really free. It's a 6% charge to the customer, but it doesn't really cost these people a lot of money to get going. And it's so, you know, there's so many ResTechs that are making it easy to get onboarded. So they just got to jump in that water and swim next to the kayak, right? But that's the hard part. Like, I'm not a tech company. I'm not a business guy. I'm just a kayak rafting operator. And that they got to get over that. So with the SMEs, I think that's a lot of it.
But Meredith, would you say that, so we all agree that the operators, and that's maybe fragmentation, small companies, etc. Do you think the ResTechs are also not innovating? And do you think the OTA side, the distributors, are not? Is it a question?
Look, I actually think the ResTechs is probably, I personally feel like probably the best innovation in our industry in the last 10 years. You know, I think the ResTechs coming into our industry has been such a positive thing. And yes, it was innovative. And that was why I left the attraction that I was working for to go and work with this startup, because I could see the gap that they were filling and what they could do. And so I think the ResTechs are doing a good job in particularly, you know, it's only been, when you think about it, a lot of them only came out in 2013. A lot of them launched. I know some of them are a little bit older, but they started becoming prevalent. It's 10 years. It's not a huge amount of time. So we are a very large experiences sector, is such a large sector, you know, so yes, it's going to take its time to get across it. But I do think the ResTechs are innovating. They are constantly trying to provide new things. Interestingly, you know, one of the ResTechs recently, they were saying, you know, they actually completely developed an AI-driven dynamic pricing. But when they rolled it out, it broke all the APIs. So they had to pull back on it. So then it's like, it's not, so, you know, they're trying to do certain things, but, you know, it is reliant on multiple other third parties and other connections and so on. And this is why things like Octo is really great coming into it, because it's hopefully going to standardize these kind of bridges and these APIs to help that innovation go through as well. So I think the ResTechs are, one thing that I think the ResTechs might be falling down a little bit on is actually, and this might be controversial, but it's a little bit more of that, the checkouts. the consumer delivery. Some of them are quite basic still, they're quite rigid, they don't have always the greatest flow, or they're not completely optimized to convert. And with some of these checkouts, they haven't really changed in the last 10 years. And so that's where I look at it, I go, well, that could improve. And I think that I think the res techs need to think about, they have two types of customers. They have the actual traveler, the consumer, but they've also obviously got the operator as well.
So that's a tweak. I'd love to fire that to three of you. Like, what's not a specific res tech, but what have you seen that innovation in res techs in the last 5 years?
That.
You got anything?
I was kind of asking that question. Well, I asked.
Well, Meredith didn't come up with anything except for a better checkout. So what else?
I don't think they are. I think 10 years, some are 15. I think that's a long time. And they should be the most innovative because they're software companies, and software companies by nature are innovative. But I think a lot of them have got stale as well. And maybe they've been dragged down, you'd say, by the operators, and they have to build so many long tail tools, and it's difficult. But I don't know what innovations have come out of res tech in the last 5 years.
Dynamic pricing.
And that's not even really being handled like very well at all. But when I think about back to the why, I think there's a lot of reasons for the why in the travel industry. Travel industry is so fragmented that even if you were able to process dynamic pricing, let's say with an OTA, they're online. So that should be the place where you can actually, manage a dynamic pricing model to some degree. But you've also got quite a few businesses that are not necessarily online businesses. So you have B2B businesses that are basically dealing with multiple travel agents or businesses across a wide portfolio. And perhaps their platform is not available or accessible to all of the businesses they work with for a multitude of reasons. I think there's also businesses like tour operators, right? Multi-day tour operators that are providing pricing for their businesses a year in advance, for instance. Like, there's still pricing going into, not as much as it used to be, but used to be that you'd have to provide pricing like a year and a half in advance because it would go into a brochure. Now, maybe that doesn't happen, but they still want pricing ahead of time so they can market to their customers and their customers can plan. So I feel like even, really, even at Go City, my goodness, when I think about the types of businesses that we work with that are distributing our products and their various needs, it's very difficult to say, okay, we're going to dynamic pricing and we're sending all of our pricing across the API, because if we did, we'd probably lose, 50% of our business. I mean, it's just, there's a lot there. So I think for me, that seems to be one of the reasons, is that travel just continues to be a very fragmented industry.
So we have two companies in distribution of our business that between them have raised almost $2 billion, right? Get Your Guide include. Between them, Viator, the others in the business, what are they doing that's innovative?
Well, they're basically, from my point of view, they're using AI. They're personalizing. Sorry, Meredith, why don't you answer that question? You're the guest.
Basically the same thing. I'm watching this space quite very closely with the large OTAs into, yes, like what AI are they going to bring in, and from that kind of itinerary planning, and how are they going to make that bookable? And so, when we looked like for the Arrival Bangkok conference, when we're looking then, and it was still really clunky. You go into the Expedia app and you try and book some experiences or an itinerary or so on, and still say, oh, you need to go back into your app and book it. And I think that's what they're all trying to crack, is how do we actually get those, itinerary planning that we do that's AI generated, how do we get it bookable and actually get it hooked into so you can then book that itinerary? I think that's coming, and I think that's going to be a huge shift in that space. And I'm not sure, and Bruce, you might have further insight into this as well, but that seems to be a huge focus, is who's going to be the first one that cracks that and gets that happening. But that's probably what I'm seeing that they're mainly trying to do. Obviously, I've talked about the checkouts before. Their consumer experiences are excellent, and their e-commerce platform in checking out and booking is so simple and easy to do. And I find that's when you compare that to, again, the direct bookings with some of the ResTech checkouts, that's where they're winning. And so I find they're really slick with that, but definitely I think that innovation space is probably stitching together the AI and the bookability factor. I think that's what they're looking at. If Bruce, you've got any other insights, you talk to those guys a lot.
My main insight on that is, let's ask Christian.
Yeah, they've raised $2 billion and they both talk about using AI in the future.
Yeah,
that's where it is today.
That's it. That's your insight.
They haven't used AI yet. I mean,
No.
you guys have got their GPT, but that's fine. It's
Trip
fine.
Advisor has their trip planning tool that, according to their new CEO, is doing really well.
Yeah, I think conversion went up like 4 times, so they converted 16 customers instead of 4, something like that. But the trip planning is interesting. None of us know if the trip planning is going to work. I don't know if it is, but Ben Drew was on an interview last week. He said, listen, they're using AI, but behind the scenes for some customer service stuff. But AI aside, they're going to be trying to use AI. Get Your Guide, I don't think have done anything much, but have they innovated? I agree about the checkouts. They're very good. I just think they're good companies now. They're very good OTAs, but they're not different to OTAs of 20 years ago. There's checkouts have advanced, right? If you look at Viator from 20 years ago, you get very similar page and very similar flow, same categories, same cities, same way to check out, same way to search. I'm not trying to say they haven't moved in 20 years, but there's nothing innovative. But I'm also not complaining. I don't know what they should do to be more.
Well, they talk about their product being innovative, right? Like what Get Your Guide's been doing with their vertical integration, their deal with Formula One, that kind of thing. Viator talks about having their ability to highlight certain partners. They're both now spending a lot of money on commercials on TV here in the US, going after that market. Is that innovative? No. Is it different? Yeah, for our industry. But as far as like tech innovation, let's get out of experiences. What tech innovation in travel have we seen?
And I don't know if I'd call this innovation, maybe just getting up to speed, but what I'm also seeing in that more traditional distribution, like you're saying, Laurie, because here in Australia, we work traditional distribution very hard. We are very far away from the rest of the world. We have a smaller population. So, the industry has had to be, quite scrappy, and just work every channel that they can. And so even now, if you speak to some of the older players, OTAs are still considered the new players, even though they've been around for quite a long time, because they're so comfortable in working with the inbound tour operators, so the DMCs and the wholesalers and so on. But what was really interesting at a conference recently, we had one of the largest inbound operators here on a panel, and it was quite. I had run a workshop before this particular panel where we were talking about this and how we as an industry need to embrace more technology and work with our booking systems more and connectivity and so on. And so a question came up for him saying, why don't you connect into booking systems? Which I was very, very happy about that got asked. And his answer was, do you know how expensive technology upgrades are? And then he actually said, if there was a travel agent in Germany wanting to book your product, then they have to log into their wholesaler, which their system has to connect with their inbound operator, then that's to connect with them. He's like, there's too many connections. But then I look at companies like Hotel Beds, who recently just ripped out their old tech stack, completely modernized, and now is basically they're just one step in, one step out. They've got those connections built. I'm sitting there thinking, well, yes, that German travel agent is going to book through someone like Hotel Beds and just book it through there, and so on. They're going to remove that. So, because they have, I actually think I'd call it innovation, maybe not, call it meeting consumer demand that's been there for the last probably 10 years.
Well, and I think that's part of it too. It's right. It's customer expectations, so I think that, maybe obviously there's a little bit of a disagreement in regard to whether or not the whole industry is not innovating. I do think there are parts of the industry that are innovating. I see it. I participate in it. I mean, when I was in London, I got into an autonomous vehicle at a hotel that took me to the airport. That's the first time that happened to me. I know there are times when I go to hotels, I just book online. I just use my QR code to get in. I mean, that's all innovation, right? So I think there's a number of things that are happening that maybe we're just not thinking of, or we're not recognizing. But I guess when it comes to things like, let's go back to the experiences industry specifically, with the lack of innovation, how much impact is that having on this business, on this industry? How much impact is it having? Now, you mentioned, Meredith, that senior roles they're hiring senior roles from the outside. That is obviously, that's a problem, right?
Why is that a problem?
Well,
That,
I
to-
mean,
to-
I
but
think
hold on,
I think it's a
that
problem.
would spur innovation to me. You bring people from a different industry, I assume more innovative, fresh eyes. Shouldn't that spur innovation?
No, you spurred, but at the same time, Christian, if it's a situation where you think you're just going to, you're going to climb up the ranks and you're going to, put your time in, and then eventually you're going to get to the C-suite or whatever, or a senior role, if you're being passed over for people that are coming outside of the industry because maybe you don't have the new ideas and you haven't been working in an industry that's innovating. Yes, I agree on that side that, that yes, it can mean more innovation, but at the same time, is that always a good thing? Is it always good to be hiring from the outside? And then I guess the other one is not attracting the best developers. I mean, that's another one. But what is the impact? That's the question. What is the impact of not innovating for this business, this industry?
Just before that as well, and part of the reason why I think, Christian, too, we're hiring outside of industry is because we are seeing, like from that conversation that I had with my friend, and I've seen with a lot of my peers, particularly around my age, who have gone, there isn't that new exciting thing. And so they've left for other industries because they're looking for that innovation and that new exciting projects to work on. And so that's also impacting why we're having to hire from outside, because we're losing a lot of highly skilled people already. And then, let's face it, tourism's not the highest paid industry too. So then it's pretty hard to get them back, once they're out there.
We're losing people. So Bruce, what do you say?
Well, I actually, from your article, we're losing people. We have engineers that are, taking higher paying jobs, but we don't have a pipeline of people coming in. There's not a lot of tourism universities out there, at least in this country, right? Probably around the world. So we don't have that pipeline of young people that are like, wow, I want to have a career in travel, tourism, hospitality. There are some great hospitality schools when you talk about Cornell and NYU and some others, but the kind of stuff that we do, you don't learn in college or university. So you don't even think about it as a career. There's a lot of us, I think, that got into this career as entrepreneurs. I started my business right out of college. Christian, I'm sure you started city sightseeing San Francisco, kind of randomly. Like, none of us studied. Did anyone study tourism on this call? You did. Okay. And it shows. Okay. But
it was a business management degree. So there are a few here in
business
Australia.
management with a tourism minor or what have you, right? So if we're not bringing people up at the beginning, how are they going to develop into that C-suite type of person?
Christian, what about you? And what's your take on this? What impact do you think this is having to the experiences industry specifically?
Yeah, I mean, just the thing about the developers, that is a thing. Developers want to work on the cool thing. They want to work on the latest thing and push the boundaries. In San Francisco now, everyone's leaving Google and Apple and Facebook trying to get into OpenAI. That's the cool place to be now. So that's the latest cool place. and yeah, developers do move to smaller companies because it's got meaning. They can have impact. So if they can't find that in travel, I do want to differentiate though. You've talked about distribution, Laurie. Well, we all have, and I think that is the problem with distribution. You got all these players. It's very complex, right? You sell to hotel beds, who sells to a tour operator, who sells to a travel agent, and if one of those players isn't keeping up with technology, it all falls apart. So it's really difficult to get new technology through that distribution maze. And I think that's one of the reasons why I say that IPW hasn't changed in 20 years, because it's so complicated. And I do think innovation, like you say, Laurie, in hotels and there's lots of other places. But it is a problem in attracting young people. Young people want to do something cool and impactful. And there are lots of places now. Obviously, AI is the latest. People want to go into places like that. Sustainability, a lot of young people.
So it's a dinosaur. We are potentially becoming a dinosaur industry. You know, the travel industry is aging, and if it's not attracting new talent, and it's not attracting you know, engineers, and it's not innovating fast enough, it's not paying enough for people who want to get in, then what's going to happen is you're not going to end up having these people that are going to have the knowledge to keep it fresh and keep it moving forward. And so frankly, you know, if you're a small or medium-sized business right now and you're not online, then, you know, eventually that business is going to go away, because the customers expect now. They expect to be able to book something online.
But there's different versions of online, right? And we can't call travel a dinosaur, like extinct. It's the second largest industry in the
No,
world.
of course, it's not a
And
dinosaur.
right. And it's not going anywhere. It's still going to be a huge industry.
What happens though, just servers start dropping, just things like if we can't attract new talent and we can't retain staff, then, you know, how does the experience delivery happen? How does that, you know, meet consumer needs and what they're looking for? You know, is that going to start slipping because we don't have enough people? And we're even seeing that, you know, post-pandemic, we had a huge skill shortage. You know, there just wasn't enough people to actually run the tours, and there's like here in Australia there's a really large tour guide shortage at the moment. There's not enough people because they had to, you know, reskill or retrain during the pandemic. So how do we get these people back? And, you know, and is that exciting and innovation and everything, getting that industry exciting and fun again? You know, is that what we need to do to get people back in and ensuring that we can keep delivering quality services?
So
I think a lot of those, tour guide being a good example, that was never something that you go into because of innovation, right? A tour guide is a great job. I've done that. But a lot of those travel jobs were never about innovation. To me, it's the best industry. I think most people would agree it's a great industry to be in. And you can attract people with nothing to do with innovation. People like to be tour guides and work in cool destinations. So I'm kind of arguing with myself here, but I'm not blaming the lack of innovation for drawing people in necessarily. Developers, yes, but most of the jobs in the travel industry,
You can outsource developers. That's all right.
Sorry, just one more comment, and then I think we got to wrap up.
Interestingly, I did ask some of my attractions friends and some of my tour operator friends on, you know, what kind of innovation would they like to see? And two of the most interesting ones that came out was from an attraction, and she's the head of visitor experiences, so she oversees all of the ticketing and the experiences inside. It's quite a large attraction here in Sydney, and she said her dream would be ticketless attractions, where people just walk in and it charges the relevant payment method that you've agreed to, whatever, via your phone, and it just charges them and it knows that you're there and it just does it for you.
100%
So we
going to happen for sure. I mean, I don't even.
Well, did you pre-book? Did she pre-buy that ticket?
No, she just turned up.
She just wants to turn up.
She turned up and she looked into a camera who looked into her eyes and said, "Yep, you paid. Move on."
Right. And there's no time ticketing or anything like that. It's just walk in the door. No inventory.
thing is, Bruce, if you look at the camera and blink once, you want to go in at 10. Going in 11. Anyway, thank you, Meredith, so much for joining us today. Obviously, travel industry is not a dinosaur industry, but sometimes it might feel that way because we all want to move. We all want to move into the future, and we recognize the opportunity that comes with innovation. And sometimes it gets a bit frustrating when maybe we're just not catching or keeping up with it. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us today, and we will all see you next time.
All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Meredith. Take
Having
care.
me.
All right. Bye.